Severino Buxton.
So here comes the... Hi. So first, a few words of thanks. Just thank you for inviting me. Thank you for staying with me. And thank you for the organizers and all the team, including the AV people who have made this work fantastic. It's rare that I've seen the complete electricity go out and have everything still work smoothly. So fantastic job. Thank you. Now, the thing about being the last speaker is that you get to listen to the other speakers, and then they give a whole bunch of the talk I planned to give, and then I have to rewrite my talk, which I finished at 1 minute before 4 o'clock, which is when I had to put the projector up. So I'm going to reference a lot of work and try and synthesize a little bit of what I've heard as well, and also hit a few drums that I care about. Funny title. I needed a title, and that's what came up. But it actually reflects what I'm going to talk about. But it maybe doesn't make sense now, but maybe it will later. But I want to start because this morning, especially with Dana's talk, but others, there was this thing about it's bigger than the technology, it's bigger than the interaction, it's actually bigger than the community. I can only think about what I do in cultural terms. There's a historian of technology. His name is Melvin Kranzberg. And he has a few laws. And his first law is technology is not good, it is not bad, but it will be some combination of the two. And my corollary to that is, without informed design, it's more likely to be negative than good. And therefore, as designers and people who put technology into the society, we have an obligation to do our best effort to make things on the positive side. Now, there's a really interesting thing about that, because if you're going to use this thing like good, bad, positive, negative, you need some kind of ethical or moral or cultural compass to tell you what the axis is on this dimension of this continuum from good to bad. And that's not something we typically get taught in design school. And what's really interesting to me is that if you reviewed a book the way you review technology, it would be, it has a fantastic cover. It holds the pages together and protects them. The pages turn wonderfully. There's a wonderful luminance contrast between the color of the ink and the color of the paper that facilitates recognizing the text on the page. And it's got a fantastic search mechanism. It has a table of contents, page numbering, paragraphs, and an index. And by the way, there's a story. Until we start talking about technology in a cultural discourse that we would use for art, theater, music, dance, architecture, cinema, in the same way, in terms of cultural references, we will never mature. And I don't think we can afford not to do that. Now, I wanted to start with a cultural reference because we had an earlier one of a Canadian band. And the one about the Canadian band was this whole thing about United broke my guitar. And so it's not just that I used to be a musician, but I wanted to come up with one of my best friends who's the keyboard player of this band called Lighthouse. It was founded by him and a guy named Skip Prokop. And they did a song, and it came out in 1978, that in fact has the same theme, and hopefully this music sound will come up. Whoops. Oh, come on. I will do this. I'll do this. Are we going? We should be going. Louder. It's a rock band. Louder. I can still hear the audience. It's too... All right, I can make it louder. blew it. That's not a volume control. I'll just get the chorus. Here we go. All right, so what does this tell us? It tells us that there's history. It keeps repeating itself. Airlines have always broken guitars. That's not what's changed. Even Canadian guitars. And people have always sung music about broken Canadian guitars. Now, but what's changed isn't the airplane, isn't the broken guitar, it isn't even making a song about it. It's the cultural, social, and political impact that comes because of the internet instead of having a hit record. That was a hit record. These guys have played Carnegie Hall 4 times. You're just too young to remember it, maybe from '78, but it really was. The point is this: no airlines changed the policy or replaced the guitar. And by the way, that was a Gibson Flying V guitar. You could buy 5 BMWs with the price of that guitar. That's Ralph Cole, who was the guitar player, was very sad. So we come up with some questions, and the question that's come up yesterday and today was, we've talked about iteration, we've talked about design, we've talked about sketching, and all these things, and I've heard somewhere that experience is actually important. And here's the dilemma. First fundamental thing that we ask, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And we've never left this particular question. If you simply called the egg design and the chicken experience, which came first? How are we supposed to make great experience if we don't first design something that we can experience? But how can I experience something that we haven't designed? It's a proverbial chicken and egg situation. And there's lots of techniques, and people will tell you all these different things. And maybe, in one sense, the best answer to this question at any given moment is what probably is worth being called design thinking. And the answer will continually change. And if you follow the circle of this diagram, you'll just say, oh, this is iterative design. We just need to iterate. Build, test, rebuild, test, till it's good enough to ship or where you just have to ship. But that's not design thinking. That's iterative design. That's iterative engineering. That's not going to solve the problem. The reason I care about this stuff is the perfect storm we just heard about in Jared's talk. I don't question anything he's saying. But he forgot to tell you one thing. That every time you get a mature market pushing out the 90% that's crap, it's at the end of the life cycle, not at the beginning. We understand, finally, every technology at the end of its life cycle. Things mature when they're old. And so as soon as this perfect storm gets pushed out by a mature market, guess what? The market's changing. And there's a whole other pile of crap waiting to land right on you, your business, and your customers. And we can anticipate it. And so what I want to do is say, how do we anticipate what's going to come so that we can avoid it? And by the way, the underlying theme I'm about to say is, what we're doing right now, the better we do it, the better you do what everybody's talked about this week, the faster it's going to collapse. Paradox, but it's true. So let's just start and look at this for a minute. Keeping in the music cultural references, René Magritte has this famous image, ceci n'est pas une pipe. That's not a pipe. It's a rendering of a pipe. You can't smoke that. It's a picture. And a lot of what we do in experience design is we do things like this, and we think that the sketch or the rendering is in fact a thing, and it's not. So I would say here's just some sketches, and I think sketching is important. I wrote a book about it, so I must think it was worth 2 years of my life. But from Brooks Stevens, I'd say, let's put this. Ce n'est pas un dessin. It's not a design. That's a sketch. It's part of a design. It's a component. It's part of the design process. That is not a design, no matter how high fidelity it is. It's just part of the process to ask the right questions. But here's the issue. This is the deeper part, and why iteration, for example, isn't enough. I have a really good printmaker friend who I've worked with really a lot named Richard Sewell, and we were talking about the whole thing of crit. And again, that's been spoken about a bit this week as well. How do we do critique of each other's work? How do we do critique to actually refine the designs and and encourage it in a way that's respectful? Well, you can't do critique on a single thing. Because if you give me a design and ask me to give a critique on that one thing, there's a one-to-one relationship between the idea that you're presenting and you. If I criticize your design, I'm criticizing you. But if you come with 5 different ideas simultaneously, and you haven't made up your mind which one is good, if any of them, then if you haven't made up your mind, why should I feel sensitive? We can talk about them. One of the reasons you sketch and you develop these quick techniques is so that you can do 5 designs instead, 5 questions rather than one answer. If I give you an answer, I criticize it. When you give me an answer and I criticize it, I'm criticizing your work. If you give me 5 and I criticize and give my opinion of them, we're working together as colleagues. Sketching is simply a way to manage the social protocol to be able to have a conversation about work that's respectful and with the end goal to get the right answer, not your answer. Multiples, therefore, are fundamental to anything we do. I don't want answers, I want propositions, I want suggestions, I want opinions, but I don't want answers. But this is just one mouse, and it's not even all the mock-ups, but these were all things that were done for a single mouse that we were doing at Microsoft. But those are the blanks, the color schemes, everything, and that's a fraction. There's boxes of those things that were made to get to the one place we landed. And we have to do that in software, we have to do that in hardware. What's important about this is we understand that in industrial design, we understand that largely in graphic design, but when it comes down to usability testing and so on, we don't understand this yet. What is true, what I said, I can't do crit, I can't do criticism, I can't do evaluation of a single idea or a single design. I cannot do usability testing on a single product or a single system in the design phase. And there's some reasons for that, which we've articulated, and this is a whole other talk, but if you look at this, it's a paper that a colleague and I wrote expressing this stuff. And it's not all the time, but some of the time, and a significant part of the time, is you have to present in usability testing multiple solutions to the same people, or else you will have the same problem with them giving you crit as what I just described on me giving you as a designer crit. It's the same deal. If you expose users to only one design, here is what we know. The literature tells us this clearly. 1, nobody will reject your design. If you show them one thing and say, what do you think? All this sort of stuff, they will never say, I will never use this. It's the biggest piece of crap. Get rid of it. You're wasting everybody's time. They will do their best to please you because people do that. They try to please. And they feel, what we understand from the literature is, they generally feel that if there's a problem, it's with them and not with the design. If you give them 3 different things, then they will give you an honest opinion and you will get rejections like that. The second thing, Any rating, we say on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate this in terms of satisfaction, how good this is? Your ratings will be much higher if you only give them one thing than if you give them 3. So you're going to start to believe your technique is going to cause people to you're going to get results that support what you hope as opposed to what you need. And the third thing is, if they've only seen one version, they can't mash them up and then even use the 3 they've seen to give you 4th ideas. Your user group will not be giving you anywhere as near as many creative suggestions if they only see one thing. Now, the problem is that means you have to make 3 prototypes, 3 things to test instead of 1. But that's why we have the techniques of sketching. That's why we have these techniques of very fast, dirty ways, so we can make 3 for the price of 1. 3, because the point isn't the end design. What's the point of having a beautiful design which is seriously suboptimal? Shooting too low. And the process we typically follow does that. So damn it. It's hard. It's not easy. And in fact, we're still learning. And that's okay. It's just the reason I'm speaking the way I am is because I'm really nervous about where we are in the industry. Because we have to get our act together on the stuff the stuff that Jared was showing out. These examples are just way too common. And that's like, we're still having trouble, a lot of the industry, just to walk when we've got to be on a motorcycle. Because what's going to come right now, walking isn't going to make it. And we need very different techniques and different attitudes. And one of the things that concerns me a little bit is we've had some conversations about hardware and the hacking part of hardware and stuff like that. It's fantastic. And we've had a lot of things about software. But we've been spending, I think, maybe neglecting the fact that if you can see the boundary between hardware and software, it is almost certainly a failure of design. And I would argue that we are about to enter, because of the hacker community, because of what's going on with rapid prototyping, 3D printers, and things like the Arduino system and so on, we are getting to a point where we were in the 70s, where in order to work in computer, in digital, you must have some basic literacy in both hardware construction and design and software, or we're going to miss it. Because what we think a browser is, or what we think a computer is, or we think what mobile is, we're wrong. Those things are all going to change because the form factors are going to change, and the problems that Jared was pointing out between just getting something to work on a mobile and a desktop is trivial compared to what's about to happen. And we're still making, it's like kindergarten mistakes. I don't mean you, I just mean the industry, the examples that Jared's put out, the 90%. We've got to get better, and we've got to figure this out faster. But if you look at this, where's the hardware on this versus the software? What part of this? And who designed this? And there's no single person that designed this. They had because a key part of this, the nest, is the machine learning. That's somebody who's really smart in AI. Very different skill set than the person that did the industrial design, which is very different than the other parts of the programming. And different from the people who did the app. And so what we come is we just take a look. You're going to go and it's going to blur and keep blurring. So until the difference between hardware and software is as blurred in the product as it is in the fonts on the screen, we're probably not ready yet. I believe that what we can do today enables us as professionals to do a good job and do the design right. We can make things that are usable. We can make things that are, Jared's examples notwithstanding, they're better than the Wang word processor that he showed at the beginning. There is progress, it's just too slow. But that's not what we're supposed to be doing. You do not win a design award when you build a bridge across a river and it doesn't fall down. You expect it to work. That's not worthy. It has to be a fantastic bridge, architecturally good materials, reliable, low maintenance, and safe. and then needs something extra, some extra magic. And so it's not just getting the design right, it's getting the right design. And the reason you need the multiples is not just for the social protocols of critique. The social protocols of critique and design and this process that are unique to design. You do not do this in software. You do not do this in hardware. You do not do this in math. You do not do this in science. Design does it. But that is what helps you as quickly as possible to get down and get the right design. And if you spent as much time learning your skills and the engineers and technologists you work with and the business people, why would you want to get a suboptimal design and a suboptimal solution? But we're going to keep doing the same thing if we do it the same way. We've got to change how we work. We've got to change how we think. Now, the problem is we don't have any time. We're always behind. But that's okay. We're allowed to be human. We're allowed to do our best. And we're absolutely allowed and, in fact, encouraged to fail. This is something called the long nose of innovation, and it helps us. It throws us a lifeline to how we can maybe work with some of this stuff. And this basically says that there's a 20-year period from the time an idea first surfaces to the time it reaches maturity, and maturity is defined that it's at least $1 billion industry. You sort of say, 20 years? That's crazy. I'll tell you how crazy it is. What it says is that if you're here 10 years out from the future till its maturity, if I'm predicting something that's going to become $1 billion industry in 10 years, it's already 10 years old. If I'm going to predict something that's going to be $1 billion industry in 5 years, it's already 15 years old. So here's my first rule. My first rule is, if anybody is proposing, advocating a solution which they're telling me it's going to be hugely successful within 5 years, if they cannot show me 15 years of history and experience in the commercial marketplace and in the research in concrete terms, you cannot show me 15 years of history, either you haven't done your homework, you're delusional, or you're really lucky and you're in the 0.1%, you just got lucky. And that's not research, that's not design, that's gambling. Go to the casino. It has to be one of the two. But it also says that the process of design and the process of innovation is not about invention. Almost everything we've been told of people like Edison is nonsense. Remember, Edison was the Steve Jobs of his time. Edison is the first, quote-unquote, inventor. I'll just call him a businessman. He was the first businessman to hire a press agent to create a public persona in the press to have him shaped as the world's greatest inventor. He had great lawyers. He had a whole factory of scientists doing his inventions. He was ruthless, and he was often wrong. But he was successful. Steve Jobs had all of those characteristics. It wasn't genius. It was hard work and really determined. But the key thing I want to say about this is that most of this is below the radar. So what I was saying, if it's not about invention, I think it's more like mining. It's prospecting. Brazil and Canada, actually recently there was some bad experiences. I apologize for my government spying on your government. But it was about mining. And so you walk across the ground, you just say, hey, it's beautiful ground. But a prospector knows, hey, there's gold under here. And so and it's just right there. Nobody else sees it. It's there. We know how to go to school and learn to be a prospector. But most of the time, it's not there. So let me give you an example from my own. In 1980s, I was a musician. I was sitting there trying to make a drum. I was trying to make an electronic drum for my synthesizer. And I wanted the drum to be so I could hit it and get a sound. I wanted the sound to change by how hard I hit it and where I hit it. But I also wanted to drag the other hand across so it go boom, 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 boom. As you know, like with the conga. That's all I was trying to do. I had this digital synthesizer, and I wanted to give it an analog control. And so we made a multi-touch capacitive device that drove my synthesizer. We did that in 1984. Now, 1984 is a special year. Two things happened. That's the year the first Macintosh was released, and that's the year Mark Zuckerberg was born. We were doing capacitive multi-touch in 1984. We made it public in 1985. Now, jump ahead to 2007. Steve, who I knew, comes out and says, we have this new thing called multi-touch. We have invented it in the last 2 years, and boy, have we patented the hell out of it. And that was when he launched the iPhone. Now, Steve was not a historian. He was speaking as a marketing person there, not as a historian. He knew perfectly well where the technology came from. It came from a guy from the University of Delaware who did his PhD thesis that has something like 30 references to our work. But they did some improvements. They did some wonderful things. The process is one of refinement and bringing it to place at the right time. Apple did a great job. I'm not suggesting anything other. I'm just saying that every other company in the world could have done the same thing because they didn't invent it. They just were opportunistic. The gold was there. Nobody else picked it up. And Steve just said, what the hell? It might as well be me. It's exactly what he did when he went to Xerox PARC. You're not going to commercialize this? What the hell? Might as well be me. And that was the Macintosh. That was his job. That's what he did. He was a curator and he was a prospector. But he wasn't an inventor. So let's keep going. I want to give you a couple examples because in that history, there's stuff to mine. I'm going to give you two quick examples that relate. Palm Pilot. You have to, if you're going to be successful mining where everyone else has already looked and said there's no gold there, you need a better technique. If you read everything about the Palm Pilot, they will tell you it's because it was small. It fit in Jeff Hawkins' pocket. He could carry it around. He'd take it out of meetings. It had very low functionality. The buttons are really big, so they fit your fingers. You can see them there. They're better than your phone today. It was released in 1996, and that's why it was successful. Well, if you go to my webpage, you'll see about half of my collection, but I have about 500 of these things, different devices. I've been collecting them for 40 years. And I can tell you that there were many devices like that that had all of those properties at the time. What made the Palm Pilot different was that it had HotSync. And so you could synchronize all your addresses and everything like that in one button push in less than a minute, and you could learn how to do that in 10 seconds. Put it in the cradle, push the button, done. Furthermore, when you bought it brand new, you could put it in, push the button once, and all the data you had in your PC went into it. If you lost it, you were out $200, and you only lost maybe 1 day's work. That's what sold the Palm Pilot. That's why they won. That's why they beat Microsoft. They got 85% market share when we were trying to compete with them. It also had graffiti for entering text. But unfortunately, they weren't very good miners there. They got it wrong. So I'll go to my other favorite example, this wristwatch. I got one of those in 1984. Do you remember 1984? That's the year the first Macintosh came out. That's the year that Mark Zuckerberg was born. That watch cost $99.95. It was mass-produced. That watch had a capacitive touchscreen on it. I have 3 of them still. It was actually a digital calculator watch. And you pushed a button on the side to say, I want the calculator, and then on the front of it, you just wrote 1 + 2 =, and it had character recognition on the crystal of the watch, and an answer would appear in that little digital window up above. And yes, it really worked. Now, that's something like 19 Moore's laws ago. The compute power that was in that, the chip today, would have over 250,000 times the compute power. And it had recognition. And what was amazing about it is it had heads-up recognition. You could do, you know how you have touch typing, so you can type on the keyboard and look and read the document like that? Well, I can write down a phone number in my watch with that thing, looking there with my eyes on the document, and just enter here, because I've got good motor memory on something this small. So right off the bat, There's in 1984 a watch that tells you how you can do SMSing, email, or other commands without looking. Anchor your thumb. You've got a frame of reference. We know this is within a human biometrics to do, and away you go. That was 1984. Palm had the graffiti, which was based also on some stuff we did on music, by the way. It was a single-stroke shorthand we developed in 1978. We published that to enter music into a computer. But they put it down on the bottom, and on this side here is where you put the text, and there's where you put numbers. Oh, and there's no feedback, so you had to look in order to write. So if the Palm had have done things correctly, they could have held it and let you enter text without looking. All I'm saying is, if you look and you're a good prospector, and Brazil is Canada's biggest competition, that if you know what to look for, and you know these things exist, and you do searching, and you know the history, it's much easier to get these things and pull them out. And there's the answer to how to work with a smartwatch or smartphones. And none of the smartwatches that are out there today let you do what that watch could do in 1984. I never met anybody who's designing smartwatches that's ever seen one of those, much less bought one. The point, I'll come back to this, but I'll make the point right now. How much would it cost you to build a prototype that let you prototype those two experiences? I can just tell you can buy the Palm Pilot on eBay for $10. The watch is going to cost you more. It might cost you $1,000. That sounds like a lot of money for a watch. I'm sorry, I'd pay $5,000 for a watch, because for you to build a prototype, the time it would take you to get the parts, build it, to get it working at a product level quality, it's going to cost more than $5,000. It's going to cost you about $30,000. So go buy it. Have the two. You've got them right there, and you can experience them immediately. We can go from egg to chicken in the length of time it takes you to buy the thing on eBay. Forget your 3D printer. You can't 3D print either of those things. So I'm not saying don't get rid of your 3D printer, just don't use them for that if the stuff you want to build is already sitting there waiting to be bought because it's been around for 30 years. And everybody's looking so far in the future, they don't realize what's behind. That's why the long nose is so important. The long nose is as important for the future as the long tail is. So, Microsoft Arc Mouse. Start with sketches, more detailed drawings. This is a mouse that folds up. It's supposed to be a full-size mouse when it's open, and yet fold up to fit in your briefcase so it has minimal space. In more detailed drawings, 3D printer model. Actually, it's probably stereolithography or a milling machine. I think that was a milling machine. Start to get into the actual product, and there we are as the final product. Interesting. That's synthesis. I'm coming back to music again. In the early days, when we had a Moog synthesizer, you had to learn how to synthesize sounds. You put sine waves together and you built up the sound you wanted. There was additive synthesis where you had sine waves. There was subtractive synthesis where you took noise and you filtered the extra stuff out. But it was synthesizing. That's what a synthesizer is about. It synthesizes sound, and that's what sketching, drawing, 3D printing, and so on are. Synthesis. It's one way to build the representations, the renderings that we use to rapid prototype and rapidly explore concepts. What I'm saying is, with something called the Emulator 2, all of a sudden we had sampling. Because it's way easier to take a photograph of the world than to model it. It's way easier to record a sound than to synthesize it, if the sound is out there. And that's what eBay is. eBay is a sampler, as opposed to a synthesizer. And so if you were doing this mouse concept, the first thing I would have bought was the Motorola flip phone. Because it's the same basic hinges. I could learn and inform about that. I don't have to build that prototype. I can get it on eBay like that. Let's explore that. How do they do it? And let's look at successive versions. One of the things that might have happened here is, because Microsoft just bought Skype, I could have a mouse that when I pick it up, it automatically becomes a phone. Right? I'm down here, I'm on a Skype call. It's coming through the speakers, everything's fine. And then you walk into the room, and I don't want to disturb you, or it's something I don't want you to hear about. I can just go bingo like that, private. I have a mouse right there. I don't need another piece of garbage on my desk. Bing. By prospecting for one reason, I take advantage of the unexpected consequences to trigger an idea of another possibility. If I was just being so focused and directed, I'm not going to miss all the stuff. Nearly all the great ideas are the results of unintended consequences of people pursuing some other objective. And the thing here is 3D printing's over there on the synthesis side. All of these techniques are valuable. The question is, you need to be good at all of them in order to choose the best one for the job you're doing. I'm not saying one's better. Everything's best for something and worst for something else. But what makes us different and professionals is how big is our repertoire of techniques. Okay, so what? What do we care about? Here's the big doomsday part of this, the part I'm worried about. And so Jared gave a nice history. I love the fact, that's one of the things I really like about him. He knows his stuff. He's old, so he's lived it, right? I'm even older, which is scary. But I want to explain what I see happening and use a slightly different taxonomy. By the way, if this is different than his, neither is wrong. What's interesting is there's probably some cross-product of the two that actually will help you learn even more. That's how you go prospecting in the way of ideas. But I'm going to say there's 3 phases to the history of interactive computing. 3. And each one is accompanied by a miracle. So I'm going to say, here's the phase, and here's the miracle. And the first phase came around 1975. And that's 4 years after I started doing computer music. I think I did my first film soundtrack completely digitally in 1971. But it wasn't a commercial product. So this is a commercial thing. It's arbitrary. This is the Altair computer. This thing had no monitor. It had no keyboard. It had no disk drive. You basically programmed it by flipping switches and flashing lights came on. It was unbelievable. And the miracle was it actually worked and people actually bought it. It's inconceivable that somebody would buy something like that today. But it was amazing. You thought you'd died and gone to heaven. And things got better really quickly. And you had text editors where you could edit text, and as long as you saved every 30 seconds, you wouldn't lose your work when the computer program crashed every 45 seconds. And you still thought that you were lucky. How many people lived through that period of computing where you knew your text editor or what you were working on the program was going to die in the middle of whatever you're doing, and you had to save all the time? Come on, you're not that young. Okay, a bit better. Now the point is this. At a certain point, we didn't expect that anymore. We stopped saving, and yet when it did happen, we got even more, really, really pissed off. And we weren't happy anymore. But we still bought the software because that was how stuff worked. Things got better. It started to auto-save and so on and so forth. But it was not good. But here's the very important thing about psychology. It's called change blindness. As human beings, we are blind to small, regular, incremental changes. As things got better, faster, cheaper, and more reliable, we didn't realize that something had changed. And we had no mechanism to have that pointed out to us. Now, contrast that with your children, or when you were a child. Your parents, you did not look older in the morning than you looked the night before when you went to bed. And yet on your birthday, when your parents took you and measured your height on the door in the kitchen, they realized, my God, you've grown that much. You're becoming a woman. You're becoming a man. We need to, for every trend that's going on, which is predictable along the long nose, we need to not just chart them, but to measure them and recognize when you have an order of magnitude change, it's become a different thing. So what happened is phase 2 happened. Everybody was feeling, oh, we're doing a really good job. We're selling lots of product. It's really good. We're really fantastic engineers. We're really great designers. We're really great, product people, salespeople. And then the iPhone came out. And in 2007. And the thing about this is, just to come again back to what you've heard all week, there were no new features. It didn't work very well in many ways. There was no new technology. There was no technology that we didn't know about. It was all there in the long nose. Multi-touch, as you've seen, has been there publicly since 1985, with no patents. I refused to patent stuff I did at university. Now, what's the miracle? It wasn't that it was faster, anything like that. It was that it flowed. Basically, it was the first broadly accepted commercial product, digital device that had an analog interface. Up until that time, digital devices had digital switch, click, pop, bang, poke, hit interfaces. This one went the way. And by the way, that's exactly what happened with musical instruments. We built digital instruments that would stay in tune, and we threw the baby out with the bathwater because to control a Yamaha DX7, which was the most popular synthesizer at the time, it was like programming a digital watch. You had to go through all these steps, through all these modes, and you had one slider, one control. And then finally, the music industry grew up and started to put analog interfaces on digital instruments. The iPhone, that's what it did. It worked, it sold, and it flowed. It met all the criteria of the first phase and added a new thing and changed everything for everybody. Now we're about to go, and I realize I've made a mistake, and this should be 2015. That's when I predict the next change is going to happen. We're going to hit the tipping point in about 2 to 3 years. And this is the case where it's not about the device. It's not about the app. It's not about the system. It's not about the service. It's about the ecosystem. And the miracle here is working from the bottom. It works, and people will sell. It has value, but it flows. And it also works together with everything else in the ecosystem. What I'd say in this way, if you think social computing, referring back to Dana's talk, for example, if you think social computing is important in terms of social computing amongst people, you've seen nothing yet in terms of importance and significance and what's going to change the industry when we have social networking amongst devices within a society of socialized humans. And right now, just because things are on the internet or on Ethernet doesn't mean that they're connected in any meaningful way. On a Palm Pilot, I could take it out, point it at your Palm Pilot, and beam you my business card. I could do that instantly. We've made all kinds of progress with Bluetooth. It's much better than infrared. They tell me it's not line of sight. I don't trust it, and it doesn't work. And there's not a single mobile device that lets you just beam up and point and just throw something to somebody, even from the same company. We've gone backwards since 1996. But nobody knows that because everybody's forgotten 1996 because they're all fixated about the future. So what are we talking about here? Every single thing here is a computer. Avalanche beacon, my car. Your car is your most expensive computer. If you have a $30,000 car, you have a $10,000 computer you bought with your money and you don't even know who made it. So, this is a very narrow cultural reference. So I'm going to do some explaining here. If you're American, you know what these are. Cracker Jacks are caramel-coated popcorn and peanuts. You buy it at baseball games, and the magic about this, the miracle with Cracker Jacks, is they put oil in with the caramel so that the caramel doesn't make the peanuts and popcorn stick together. That was the miracle. In 1896, when they were released, nobody could believe their eyes. Hey, it's caramel popcorn, and it's not all gooey together. It comes out. And there was 2 lines in the advertising The copyright is back from 1896. The first one is there's a prize in every box. You open that thing up. At the bottom, there's a little lead toy. Originally, they were lead. And so you'd eat like crazy to get to the toy. Is there anybody here who knows the other advertising slogan? That also, the copyright comes from 1896. Okay, I'll tell you. The more you eat, the more you want. Now, this is the lead-in to the soon-to-become incredibly famous Buxton's Cracker Jack law. And it is. The digital gadgets, the apps, all these devices that are being made now because people learned the lesson of the iPhone, and we're making things cheaper, better, to do way and way more and more things, means that I can consume digital electronics and processes and services as cheaply and with as much appetite as Cracker Jacks. But what happens when I can have all the Cracker Jacks I want as a kid? I eat, I get uncomfortable. I keep eating, I'm really, really uncomfortable. And I keep eating, and then I'm like the kid that Jared talked about on the ride. And once you've done that, you're not going to eat Cracker Jacks anymore. What's going to happen with the digital? Oh, I want this. Oh, I need a Nike Fuel. Oh, I need these running shoes like that. Oh, I need a new car. I need a new bike computer. Oh, I need a new camera. I need the camera to hook up to my printer. Oh, and I need a 3D printer. No, man, I really need a new watch. Oh, I got those glasses. I got to get them. But, oh, no, I want the head thing that can do the biopotential so my computer can read what I'm thinking. And now I don't even know where I'm going, so I've got to have somebody that can translate automatically. I'm going to keep getting more and more and more until I get uncomfortable. I can't understand it. And then industry goes. And it's because Cracker Jacks taste so good that it breaks down. And it's because we're getting so good at making these digital gadgets that we're going to make everybody sick of them. Our very success is the root of our forthcoming failure. And why? If these things are so easy to use and getting better and they're so cheap and they're so wonderful that people just literally stand up in line for 2 or 3 days in the winter in Toronto to buy a new one of these things at a highly inflated price, then I don't think I'm wrong. Let's skip this because I meant to delete it. I'm going to talk about complexity, because that's the root of the problem. There's this thing called the threshold of frustration. What's been going on is we're getting so much better at making devices, not only are they cheap and affordable, the complexity of the individual devices are getting simpler and simpler. They're getting easier to use. They're following Jared's rules. They're having less and less functionality, but they're doing the right functionality for the right person at the right time in the right form in that device. Here's the problem. The cumulative complexity of a whole bunch of simple things is way beyond the human capacity to deal with. I don't care if it's one horrible Wang word processor that takes 2 weeks to learn how to save a file. The same complexity that made that thing absolutely unacceptable by today's standards is less complexity than all the devices we're flooding the market with are going to cause in the next few years. It's not about making a good device or a good app or a good service. It's about how does I bring those new things into the ecosystem in a way that reduces complexity, not increases. Case in point, these really and truly are the remote controls in my living room. I was photographing some of my collection, and I thought, I got to do this. So I just grabbed them, put them in the light box, and photographed them. Everyone in my family, including me, knows how to use any one of these devices. There's not a single person that knows how, including me, who knows how to move from the DVR to a CD-ROM or CD or to the game machine or stuff like that. Nobody knows how to work those things anywhere in any home. If they do, they're a freak of nature. They're outliers in the statistics, right? That is nothing compared to what's happening now in terms of the digital crud that's coming out. So I have 3 rules. And these are the rules that I think that we have to adhere to, and we have to have the discipline to figure them out, so how to obey them, or we're dead. And I don't mean you're dead. I mean the people who pay, the way you get paid is dead, so you don't get paid. You don't have a job. You have no future unless you can solve these 3 rules. These are 3 rules that I think every new product, every new service, and every new application needs to aspire to. Rule number 1, every new product and service must provide great experience and excellent value. It must work. Oh, please don't do this. Remember what I said about saving? I must have crashed on the last save. All right. There's 3 rules. I will do this without the slides. Watch. No eyes. Number 1, every new product and service works and brings value. Rule number 2, even if it works and brings value and is worth buying, you shouldn't make it unless it flows. It must flow. It must deliver that analog, wonderful experience. Rule number 3, every new product, service, and app that you produce or I produce, when we design it, we must aspire that it reduces the complexity of every other digital product that your customer already has, that it increases the value of every product and service and app your customer already has, and every product that you already have increases the value and reduces the complexity of the thing you just bought. And by the way, the thing you just bought had enough value on its own to be worth buying, and now I've got a synergy from the other things in the ecosystem. Until we reach that, we're on a path to self-destruction. And I believe it's possible to do. And this is the same slide done properly. That's what you... All right. Now, I want to give some examples because I can hear people thinking, okay, he's Canadian, he probably played ice hockey, he's probably hit his head on the ice too many times, and he's crazy. And we didn't realize it, we thought he was just funny. Now we think he's crazy. So, take a look. My phone. My car. These are both 2 computers. 1/3 of the cost of that car is in the information system. If you have a modern car, the cabling that hooks together the computational and digital devices costs about the same as the motor of your car. That's before the computers. But here's what's fascinating. What I love about this is that my phone works like my phone, right? I just pull it out. On the left, it's got the modern or Metro interface. It's multi-touch, so it's eyes into me, fingers into the phone. It's got pretty good apps. It's got Wi-Fi. It's got navigation. I can text. I can do all these things. It's neat. And when I get into my car, put it in passenger seat, drive along, and all of a sudden there's this woman in my car that I've never met. She's the nicest woman. If I don't listen to her, she doesn't yell at me. She never swears at me. And she repeats herself without ever saying, damn it, I've told you 3 times, turn right. No, she's great. But the main point is, when I'm driving the car, no fingers, no eyes. Everything's speech. Quick question. Where's the phone? You, where's the phone? When I'm doing that. Shut it out, I can't hear. Pardon? No. 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 Pardon? All around. Here's my rule. If you're working on mobile and you think you know what mobile is, you're unqualified to work on mobile. That was a trick question. That's what we call a trick question in the business. I set you up to sucker you in, pull you in, and you fell for it. Like the 90%. I'm trying to turn in the 10%. You should have said, and by the way, when anybody like me gives you that question, say, bogus question. Or, it doesn't matter. Or, say, yes. But don't answer. Anything that's obvious is probably wrong. The point is, it's not about the phone, it's about the conversation. Who cares? That's another good answer. Who cares? I can talk to my son, and if you text me, this woman's going to come and say, I got a text from you. What would you like to do? Read it? So she reads it to me. I can answer. Everything's hands-free, eyes-free. Off we go. It's pretty transparent. Okay, I know there's cognitive distraction. We'll leave it to the side for now. We can't solve everything in this amount of time. I'll do that tomorrow morning. Or you can. But here's the point. When I get out of I'm talking to you in the middle of the call. I get where I'm going. I park the car. I turn off the motor. I pick up my phone, go like this, and walk out. And every time this happens, I have a huge, huge smile on my face. Why? Because look what happened. When this was sitting on the car seat and I was driving the car, the only part of this that was being used is the SIM chip, the Bluetooth chip, the battery, and a little bit of logic. Everything else was unused. The speaker, the microphone, the address book, the speech recognition and synthesis was all in the car. Okay? So, when I'm doing this, I've got touch and vision for interaction, operational side of the phone. When I get out, when I'm outside the car, when I'm in the car, it's speech in. So here's the miracle. I get out of the car doing this, and everybody says, make consistent user interfaces. That's the worst advice. Do not hire anybody who ever tells you that, or fire them, unless they follow it up with the following, which I'll tell you the following in a second. I want to make this other point. 95% of the hardware managing the phone call locally changed seamlessly. When I got out of the car, I picked it up. As soon as I turned the car off, 95% of the hardware managing the call changed. As soon as I turned the car off, 100% of the user interface changed. Not 10, not 20, not 80, not 90, not 95, not 99. 100% of the interaction language changed. So I have a average, 197.5% of the thing changed. I have complete inconsistency of interaction language. I have near complete inconsistency with the hardware. And because of that, I have complete consistency of conversation. You should not make your mobile phone behave like a middle-sized screen. And the same thing when we go to big displays. Like a musical instrument, you write for a new musical instrument, you use a slightly different language. You try to transfer skills, transfer knowledge, so you minimize learning. And you have to have compatibility of interaction. But that coupling and decoupling of the phone is amazing. Everything we have should start to do that. So what's going on there? From the technological side, we have seamless aggregation and disaggregation of the devices, of the technologies. They join together and they come apart, and it's seamless. At the same time, we have graceful augmentation and degradation of capabilities. It's dynamic. Now, you might think that if you have aggregation, it automatically brings augmentation of capabilities. And that if I have degradation, if I have disaggregation, I have degradation of capabilities. Well, no, they both ways, and it goes this way as well. Notice, when I get to the phone, into the car, The speech recognition capabilities go way up, highly augmented by the aggregation. But at the same time, you can't play Angry Birds. You can't play solitaire. You can't work a spreadsheet. 90% of the functionality of the phone disappears and is completely unavailable to you while you're driving your car, as it should be, and you never miss it. And anybody who tried to implement it is just dumb. There are people like that who build. Some people even think that it's a good idea to have a 17-inch touchscreen panel as the control for your car that you need to do even to open the windows. That's how bad design, and you can even win design awards by having such irresponsible design. The point here is that these things are transitions. Remember I said it's analog. Analog control, analog, continuous change. That we need to spend as much detail, if not more, on the design of the transitions from one state to another than we do in any single state. It's the transitions that's the problem. You could always synchronize your PDA with your computer. It's just the transaction cost prior to the Palm Pilot was so high, nobody did it. And even if but they didn't do it also because they never even learned how, because it was too complicated. And these are the qualities of the transitions. We have to specialize. You need, in my opinion, we all need more game designers and filmmakers and animators on our design teams, because those are people who understand movement, timing, and that. And the game people more than any, because they're used to doing interactive transitions as opposed to presentation transitions. So let's come back to the car. I think all these other devices should have the same type of connectivity. If I have a digital SLR that's mine, and I have a smartphone that's mine, and I want to take a photograph with my telephoto lens and send it up to Instagram, I should be able to pair my phone and my camera together as seamlessly and as gracefully as my car and my phone. Why can't I do that? Why do I need a SIM chip in my smart pad, in my Slate or whatever, when I've got a perfectly good SIM chip with a data charge on my phone? They should pair. They don't. None of them do. So I'm going to finish up, and just with an example. 2 examples of the same thing. Remember I said design, you've got to have multiples. I'm only going to do 2 because we're running out of time. Here's a guy you've met. You don't know you've met this guy, but you've met this guy. He just got off the train, and he has to walk from King's Cross Station in London to the University College London. It's about a 10-minute walk. The construction around that, in the last 10 years, every time I go there, it's changed. I can never find my way. So I have a smartphone, my smartphone, and it doesn't matter if it's an iPhone or an Android phone for this example, or a Windows phone. I don't care, because all of those phones have a GPS in them, they have good mapping, and I just say, here. So then I come. People all around me. I'm going along like this. Right? There's a dog over there who just left stuff I just stepped in. There's people behind me that want to kill me because I'm slowing them down. My wife, who I'm ignoring, who's trying to talk to me about stuff, I can't because I'm concentrating here. Shut up, dear, I'm working. I'm trying to get us to where we're trying to go. Okay, question. Do you know this guy? Have you seen this guy? Have you ever known this person? Okay, yes? Do you like this guy? Does anybody like that guy? See? Even cats get away from this guy. Do you know how much time it took to train that cat to come out on cue? I'm a professional. All right. Are you this guy? Because if you don't like that guy and you're that guy, you don't like yourself. Think about it. I hate myself when I'm being this jerk. I'm 65 years old and I don't want to live my life like that. Do you like the companies that make the technology that force you to be that guy? Do you love those people who make you be that guy? You tolerate them because there's nothing better, just like we tolerated that Wang word processor. Is it natural? No. Here's the key thing. Is there anything that is possible to do on the phone in hardware or software that will prevent you from being that guy? And I would argue the answer is probably no. No matter how good you are, the most perfect, beautifully designed software interface, interaction language, the whole thing, the buttons, Jared, you can get your fingers on them, you can do it with your nose and it still works. It's perfectly designed for touch. The nose phone interface, it's a patent that quickly. Point is this, you can't fix it because you're approaching it wrong. Let me give you an alternative way. I'm still on the, get rid of him, bring this on. Got off the train. I program my phone where I want to go, and then I put my phone in my pocket, and we're walking along together, and since I'm deaf, she's able to talk to me, and I'm able to listen to her because I can see her because my eyes are free. And it's great. You just don't know what we're talking about unless you know how to sign. Now, just so you know, what my phone did is it said, hey, look on the upper right-hand corner of the advertisements around the station, and you'll see a red light blinking like that, in the upper left-hand corner, sorry. And just look around the ads. Oh, there it is. Follow the dot. When I get close to the dot gives a little blick to the side to tell me what direction to start looking to the next place. And so it's like a lighthouse. I follow the dots to get to where I'm going. The dots are on the displays that are in the ecosystem already there because advertisers want to be where I am. The advertisers are going to pay for it because I get my eyes freed up so I can actually look at the ads that they've paid all this money to put up. In fact, on the advertising side of things, we've turned everything completely upside down. Instead of a really annoying pop-up application instead of a really obnoxious pop-up ad on my mobile application, I have a pop-up application on the ad. The advertisers that deliver this capability that lets me not be that guy are doing me a favor. And as I walk along, away I go. So it says, oh, but just a sec. You've got to change the business model of advertising. You've got to change who puts the infrastructure in to make this stuff happen. How do you make the codes? Because that's actually not a very good design. I'm not advocating this is the correct solution. What I'm saying is, if when you're looking at problems, and you don't look at them in the larger social, cultural, technological, and political, economic ecosystem, if the solutions, when I say do 5 meaningfully distinct alternatives, if they're not as different from each other as this is from that, we're not pushing. We're way too conservative. This is about how I play the ecosystem. And it's about the society of devices cooperating to form a culture that we all actually get something out of. Every stakeholder can win if you design the economic model with the technological model and you leverage the devices. But the key thing is we need to have the security right, the networks right, and all these other things correct. But the alternative to not doing that is we all collapse. And this also means you don't need tracking. There's no cookies. There's nothing. Because my eyes are there. I can make it completely anonymous. Disappear. It's just a thought. But it's more than a thought. It's a way of thinking. That's called design thinking. It's a way of holistic design thinking that looks beyond the device, beyond the gadget, beyond the material, and beyond even the social part. It looks at the whole thing. And if we don't have those skills in our organizations, then we're probably going to suffer for it in terms of suboptimal designs. And so the question always is, how do you design the team? What are the skill sets that we need to populate our practices with so that we can actually start to take advantage and not be run over by a perfect storm when this society of devices gets overwhelming, but actually we can wrestle it down and it becomes fantastic, because some storms are beautiful. right? If you're prepared, storms are beautiful. Nature's wonderful. And that's our job, make it happen. Piaget says intelligence is the ability of an organism to adapt to a changing environment through the process of assimilation and accommodation. That whole thing. Adaptability, another verb, to a changing ecosystem. That's intelligence. Intelligent design is design that helps us adapt to the inevitable changes that are happening right now. That means to be intelligent, we have to monitor and understand those changes, just like your children coming up. It's not about great usability, great interaction design, or even great experience. As professionals, we should be able to deliver great interaction, design, and usability, and great value. That's our job. What we need to aspire for is going beyond that and hitting it right at the culture level, at the quality of life, at the style of life. And that says, what are your values? And here's the closing point. We're approaching a point where we can build anything we want if we're determined to do so. And so the only relevant question, or not the only, the most relevant question is, now that we can build anything, what should we build? Not what's Apple building. We have to think on our own, and we need to have some cultural guide, something that says, what makes me Brazilian? What makes me Canadian? What makes me like my family? What's important to me? That question was asked the other day. Most important question. What's important to you? If you can't answer that, how can you design for it? And you have to understand for the culture of your society at every level, from the individual right up through the space. And with that, I say thank you very much, and we'll see you for doing it.